I should have known something was wrong when Rachel started working late 3 nights a week. My wife of 15 years had never shown that kind of dedication to her marketing job at Pinnacle Communications, not until 6 months ago, when she suddenly became passionate about client presentations and strategy sessions. The discovery came on a Tuesday evening in September. I'd left my law office early with a migraine, something that rarely happened. Our house in Westchester sat quiet in the golden afternoon light, Rachel's BMW absent from the driveway. Normal enough, she'd mentioned another late meeting. I was heading upstairs for some aspirin when I heard the shower running. Odd. Rachel always texted when she came home early. I climbed the stairs quietly, attorney instincts kicking in. Something felt off. The bedroom door stood ajar. Through the gap, I could see clothes scattered on our hardwood floor. Rachel's blue dress, the one I bought her for our anniversary. A man's gray suit jacket, expensive, not mine. My chest tightened. 15 years of marriage, 2 kids in college, a life built together. And this is how it crumbles with designer clothes on our bedroom floor. The shower stopped. I backed down the hallway, slipping into my home office. My hands shook as I powered up my laptop, muscle memory guiding me to the wireless security system I'd installed last year. Rachel had complained about the cameras, said they made her feel watched. Now I understood why. I pulled up the footage from 2:30 p.m. and there she was, my beautiful wife of 15 years, walking through our front door with a tall silver-haired man in his 50s, confident stride, expensive watch, the kind of polished arrogance that screamed wealth. They were laughing, his hand on the small of her back. I didn't need to watch the rest. The 30-minute gap before they emerged from the bedroom told the whole story. James Morrison, I realized, studying the man's face, CEO of Morrison Industries, one of the city's largest real estate development firms. I'd seen him at charity galas, knew his reputation as a serial philanderer. His second wife had divorced him 2 years ago, walking away with $50 million and custody of their twin daughters. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd built my career as a divorce attorney specializing in high net worth cases. I knew exactly what Rachel and Morrison had just handed me. That night, Rachel came home at her usual late meeting time of 9:30 p.m. She kissed my cheek, the same cheek she'd kissed for 15 years, and asked about my day. Migraine, I said, not looking up from my newspaper, came home early. Oh, honey. Her voice carried just the right note of concern. I'm sorry I wasn't here. Another client emergency. I nodded, studying her face. Rachel had always been beautiful, blonde, athletic, the kind of woman who turned heads at 43. Tonight, she looked radiant, guilty and radiant. Which client? I asked casually. Morrison Industries. James Morrison is expanding into Connecticut, wants a complete rebrand for the luxury market. The truth wrapped in professional justification. Classic Rachel. I'd met my wife at Columbia Law School, but she'd switched to marketing after our first year. She was brilliant at reading people, understanding what they wanted to hear. It's what made her so good at her job. It's also what had kept me blind for 6 months. Demanding client, I said, you could say that. Over the next week, I did what any good attorney would do. I gathered evidence. The beauty of being a divorce lawyer is understanding exactly what constitutes proof of adultery in New York State. More importantly, I knew how to get that proof without alerting the other party. I hired Marcus Webb, a private investigator I'd used on dozens of cases. Former NYPD detective, discreet, thorough. Within 3 days, he'd confirmed what I already knew. Every Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, Marcus reported, sliding a thick folder across my desk. They meet at the Meridian Hotel on East 57th. Same suite. Morrison keeps it year round. Your wife arrives first. He follows 20 minutes later. They're not particularly careful. The photographs were damning but unnecessary. In New York, adultery was grounds for divorce, but I wouldn't need to prove it in court, not if I played this right. Financial records? I asked. Morrison's paying for everything: hotel suite, restaurants, even bought her a bracelet last month, 4,500 at Tiffany's. I thought about the bracelet Rachel had bought herself to celebrate landing the Morrison account. She'd worn it to our anniversary dinner. Kids, both at college, as you know. Sarah's at Yale, finishing her senior year. Michael's a sophomore at Harvard. Neither has any idea about their mother's activities. I leaned back in my chair, studying the evidence. In court, this would be a slam dunk, but court was just one weapon in my arsenal. Marcus, I need you to dig deeper. Morrison's business practices, his previous divorce, any skeletons in his closet. And Rachel, I want to know everything about this affair. When it started, how they communicate, who else knows about it. Planning something specific, I smiled. I'm planning everything. That weekend, I drove up to Yale to visit Sarah. My daughter had inherited Rachel's beauty and my analytical mind, a dangerous combination. Over lunch at Maury's, she mentioned her mother's recent changes. Mom's been different lately, Sarah said, twirling her pasta. Happier, I guess, more energetic. Different how? New clothes, new hairstyle. She FaceTimed me last week wearing makeup at 10 p.m. on a Thursday. Who does that? Who indeed? Thursday was one of Rachel's Morrison Industries nights. Your mother's been working hard lately, I said carefully. Big new client, Morrison Industries, right? She talks about them constantly, especially the CEO. Sarah paused. Dad, you'd tell me if something was wrong, wouldn't you? I looked at my daughter, brilliant, perceptive, about to graduate summa cum laude with a degree in psychology. She already knew, not the details, but she knew. If something were wrong, I said, I'd handle it. Your job is to focus on school and your future. She nodded, but I caught the worried look in her eyes. That drive back to Westchester crystallized my strategy. Rachel wasn't just cheating on me, she was risking our children's respect, our family's reputation, everything we'd built together. For what? Great sex with a wealthy narcissist? She'd made her choice. Now I'd make mine. Monday morning, I called my partner, David Chen, into my office. We'd built Morrison and Chen from nothing, specializing in high stakes divorce cases. David was one of the few people who knew how ruthless I could be when protecting a client's interests. I need a favor, I said, closing the door behind him. Personal or professional? Both? I laid out the situation without emotion, the way I'd brief him on any case. David listened without interruption, his expression growing more concerned as I spoke. Jesus, Robert, I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Help me plan. David leaned forward. What are you thinking? Total war. I want Rachel and Morrison to lose everything that matters to them: money, reputation, social standing, professional credibility. Everything. That's comprehensive. I didn't spend 20 years building expertise in high net worth divorce cases to roll over when it's my turn at the table. We spent the next 2 hours planning. David would handle the preliminary legal work, quietly preparing divorce papers, researching Morrison's assets, establishing the framework for what would become a very public, very expensive fight. The prenup, David asked, ironclad. Rachel signed it before my first big case when we had nothing to lose. Adultery voids her claim to anything beyond basic support. And Morrison? I smiled. Morrison's going to discover that screwing a divorce attorney's wife is a very expensive mistake. That afternoon, I called Morrison's office. James Morrison's office. This is Jennifer. Jennifer, this is Robert Palmer from Morrison and Chen. I'd like to schedule a meeting with Mr. Morrison regarding a potential legal matter. Certainly, Mr. Palmer. What type of legal matter? corporate restructuring. I understand Mr. Morrison is expanding into Connecticut. A pause. Yes, that's correct. How did you? I make it my business to know about major developments in the area. My firm specializes in complex legal structures for high net worth clients. 20 minutes later, I had a meeting scheduled for Thursday afternoon. The same day, Rachel would be warming Morrison's bed at the Meridian Hotel. Thursday afternoon, I sat in Morrison's mahogany paneled office on the 40th floor of the Morrison Industries building. Through floor to ceiling windows, Manhattan spread below us like a chessboard. Appropriate, considering I was about to make my opening move. James Morrison was exactly what I'd expected: tall, silver haired, expensively dressed, the kind of man who'd never heard the word no from anyone who mattered. He exuded the casual arrogance of inherited wealth and unchecked power. Mr. Palmer, he said, extending a firm handshake, I've heard excellent things about your firm. Corporate restructuring for Connecticut expansion, Jennifer said. That's correct. I settled into the leather chair across from his desk. I understand you're working with Pinnacle Communications on the marketing strategy. Yes, excellent firm. Rachel Palmer is handling our account personally. Very talented woman. He said it casually, but I caught the slight emphasis on personally. The bastard was enjoying this. Palmer, I said thoughtfully. Interesting coincidence. That's my last name, too. Morrison's smile faltered for just a moment. Really? Common name, I suppose. Not that common. In fact, Rachel Palmer is my wife. The silence stretched between us like a taut wire. Morrison's face went through several expressions: surprise, calculation, and finally defensive arrogance. I see, he said carefully. Well, that's unexpected, isn't it? I leaned back, completely relaxed. 15 years of marriage, and she's never mentioned working with someone who shares my last name. Though I suppose she's been very focused on this account lately, working late 3 nights a week. Morrison's jaw tightened. He was trying to decide whether to deny, deflect, or attack. I could see the wheels turning. Rachel is a dedicated professional, he said finally. Oh, I know exactly how dedicated she is. I smiled. In fact, I have a proposal for you, James. May I call you James? He nodded warily. I think we can help each other. You see, I specialize in protecting high net worth individuals during difficult transitions, divorce, business disputes, reputation management, the kind of complex situations that require discretion. I'm not sure I follow. Of course you do. You're a smart man, James. You didn't build a $1 billion company by being naive. I leaned forward. Here's the situation. I know about you and Rachel. I have photographs, hotel records, financial transactions. In New York, that's called adultery and it voids prenups. Morrison's face had gone pale, but his voice remained steady. What do you want? I want to make you an offer. A way for both of us to walk away from this situation with minimal damage. I'm listening. Rachel doesn't know that I know. She thinks she's being clever, thinks she's found her prince charming. But you and I both know this isn't going anywhere permanent. You're not going to marry her. You're not the marrying type, based on your track record. Morrison said nothing, but his silence was confirmation enough. So here's my proposal, I continued. You end it today. Clean break, no explanation, no contact. In exchange, I'll handle the divorce quietly. Rachel gets the minimum required by law. Our kids never have to know the details, and your name never comes up in court documents. And if I refuse, I smiled, the predatory smile I reserved for opposing counsel who'd made the mistake of underestimating me. Then I destroy you both. Publicly, professionally, personally, I've handled enough high profile divorces to know exactly how to make this the most expensive mistake of your life. Morrison was quiet for a long moment, studying my face. Finally, he spoke. You're very calm for a man whose wife is cheating on him. I'm a professional, James. This is just another case to me now. Just another case? He leaned back. Your wife of 15 years is just another case. My wife ended our marriage the day she decided to fuck you in our bedroom. Now she's just another cheating spouse, and you're just another home wrecking defendant. The crude language hit its mark. Morrison flinched. What makes you think I'll agree to this? Because the alternative is much worse. I opened my briefcase, pulling out a thin folder. Marcus Webb is very thorough. Did you know Rachel isn't your first married woman? There was Mrs. Catherine Hayes, wife of the federal district judge, and before her, Dr. Sarah Kim, married to the head of pediatric surgery at Mount Sinai. Morrison's expression darkened. Both women divorced their husbands after their affairs with you ended badly. Both received substantial settlements that their ex husbands blamed on your involvement. Dr. Kim's husband was quite vocal about your role in destroying his family. Get to the point. The point is that you have a pattern, and patterns are admissible in court when establishing character and intent. Judge Hayes is still on the bench, by the way. He'd probably recuse himself from any case involving you. But his colleagues might find the whole situation interesting. I closed the folder and returned it to my briefcase. You have until Monday morning to make your decision. End it with Rachel, or I'll make sure everyone in New York knows exactly what kind of man you are. That sounds like blackmail. That sounds like a business proposition between two intelligent adults. I stood up. Enjoy your weekend, James. That night, Rachel came home glowing. Whatever had happened at the Meridian Hotel that afternoon had left her in an excellent mood. How was your day? She asked, kissing my cheek. Productive. Closed a difficult case, actually. That's wonderful. She was moving around the kitchen with extra energy, humming while she prepared dinner. I had a great day too. James Morrison finally approved our comprehensive campaign strategy. James Morrison, my client. The one I've been working so hard with, working hard. The euphemisms were almost insulting. You seem very invested in this account, I observed. Rachel paused in her chopping of vegetables. It's a career defining opportunity. Morrison Industries could transform Pinnacle's reputation in the luxury market. And Morrison himself, what's he like to work with? He's a demanding, but brilliant, the kind of client who pushes you to do your best work. I nodded thoughtfully. Sounds like a good professional relationship. The best, she said, not meeting my eyes. Over the weekend, I waited. Rachel was distracted, checking her phone constantly. By Saturday evening, she was visibly agitated. Everything all right? I asked. Fine. Just waiting to hear back from a client about some urgent revisions. Sunday morning, her phone buzzed during breakfast. Rachel grabbed it eagerly. Then her face fell. Bad news? I asked. Morrison Industries is reassessing their marketing strategy. They might be scaling back the campaign. That's unfortunate after all your hard work. Rachel stared at her phone, confusion and hurt clear on her face. I don't understand. Everything was going so well. By Monday morning, I had my answer. Marcus called at 8:30 a.m. Morrison sent flowers to your wife's office, he reported. Expensive arrangement with a note. Thank you for your professional service. We've decided to move in a different direction. That's it. Apparently, my contact at the hotel says he canceled his standing reservation at the Meridian. I felt a mixture of satisfaction and disappointment. Satisfaction that Morrison had chosen the smart path, disappointment that I wouldn't get to destroy him. But Rachel was a different story. Over the next 2 weeks, I watched my wife go through what could only be described as the stages of grief. Denial came first, constant checking of her phone, staying late at the office, hoping Morrison would call, finding excuses to drive past the Morrison Industries building. Then came anger. Rachel snapped at everyone, me, our kids during phone calls, her colleagues. She was furious at Morrison for cutting off contact without explanation, but she couldn't say that out loud. Bargaining followed. She threw herself into her work, taking on extra projects, working weekends. She was hoping excellence would bring Morrison back, not understanding that I'd removed him from the equation entirely. Depression set in during the third week. Rachel barely ate, slept poorly, moved through our house like a ghost. She'd invested 6 months of her life in a fantasy, and now it was gone without explanation. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "You seem tired lately," I said one evening, finding her staring at her untouched dinner. "Just work stress. Maybe you should take some time off. We could go away for a weekend, just the two of us." The suggestion seemed to physically pain her. "I can't. Not right now." "The Morrison Industries account?" She winced at the name. "It's complicated. Want to talk about it?" "No." I nodded sympathetically. Sometimes these high pressure client relationships can become too personal. It's important to maintain professional boundaries. Rachel's eyes snapped to mine, searching for hidden meaning, but I kept my expression neutral, concerned. "I always maintain professional boundaries," she said defensively. "Of course." I was speaking generally. That night, she cried in the bathroom. I could hear her through the closed door, quiet, broken sobs that lasted nearly an hour. Part of me wanted to comfort her. 15 years of marriage doesn't disappear overnight, and I'd loved this woman deeply. But then I remembered the security footage, the hotel records, the expensive bracelets she'd worn to our near anniversary dinner. She'd made her choice. Now she could live with the consequences. While Rachel grieved her lost affair, I was preparing for war. David had been busy during Morrison's 2 week deadline, and the results were comprehensive. "Rachel's been careful with communication," he reported, spreading files across my office conference table. No emails, no text messages, no paper trail. But Morrison wasn't quite as careful. "What did you find?" His secretary kept detailed calendar records. "Every meeting with RP from Pinnacle Communications is documented, including the ones at the Meridian Hotel, listed as private client consultation. Anything else?" "Credit card records. Morrison paid for everything: hotel suite, expensive dinners, jewelry. The Tiffany's bracelet cost 4,700, exactly what Marcus reported." David slid another folder across the table. "This is more interesting. Morrison's been married 3 times. The first divorce was quiet, settled out of court, but the second wife, Margaret Morrison, she went scorched earth." I opened the file, scanning the documents. Alienation of affection claims, intentional infliction of emotional distress, fraud. She accused him of using company resources to fund affairs. Gets better. During discovery, they found a pattern going back over a decade. Morrison uses his business as a cover for seducing married women, then discards them when he gets bored or the risk becomes too high. How many women? Margaret's investigators identify at least 8 over a 15-year period, all married, all involved with Morrison through business relationships. I leaned back, considering the implications. So Rachel wasn't special. She was just the latest in a long line. Appears that way. And here's the kicker: 3 of the women attempted suicide after Morrison ended things abruptly. The room went quiet. David was watching my face carefully. "That changes things," I said finally. "How so?" "If I'd just wanted Morrison punished, his cooperation would have been enough. But now," I gestured at the files, "now I want him destroyed completely." "Robert, be careful. There's a difference between protecting your interests and becoming vindictive." I looked at my partner and oldest friend. David was right to be concerned, to be but he didn't understand what I was feeling. Morrison didn't just seduce my wife, I said. He's a predator who destroys families for sport. The fact that Rachel fell for it doesn't make her innocent, but it does make him more guilty. So, what's the plan? I smiled, the pieces falling into place. We're going to do something Morrison has never experienced. We're going to make him face consequences. The beauty of being a divorce attorney is understanding leverage, not just legal leverage, emotional, financial, and social leverage. Over the next month, I quietly built pressure from every angle. First, I reached out to Margaret Morrison, James's second ex-wife. She was living in Los Angeles, remarried to a tech executive, apparently happy. But when I mentioned her ex-husband was up to his old tricks, her interest sharpened. That bastard is still destroying marriages? She asked during our phone call. I'm afraid so. My wife was his latest target. Was I convinced him to end it, but I'm concerned about other women, other families. Margaret was quiet for a long moment. What do you want from me? Information, his patterns better than anyone. I know he's a sociopath who gets off on power. The sex is just a bonus. What he really enjoys is convincing women to betray everything they claim to value. Tell me more. James studies his targets. Married women with something to prove, usually in professional settings where he can play the powerful mentor. He makes them feel special, chosen, like they deserve more than their boring suburban lives. It was in perfect description of what had happened to Rachel. Then what? Then he gets bored or scared or both. He cuts contact without warning, leaves them devastated and confused. Meanwhile, he moves on to the next target. How did you catch him? Private investigator, hotel records, credit card statements, same as you, probably. But I made a mistake. I confronted him directly, gave him time to prepare his defense. What would you do differently? Margaret laughed bitterly. I'd let him think he was winning, right up until the moment I destroyed him. After hanging up, I sat in my office thinking about strategy. Morrison believed he dodged a bullet by ending things with Rachel. He was probably congratulating himself on his narrow escape, maybe already scouting his next target. He had no idea what was coming. That evening, I had dinner with Thomas Hayes, an old law school friend who happened to be the son of federal district judge Catherine Hayes, Morrison's victim from 3 years earlier. My mother still won't talk about it, Thomas told me over drinks at the Union Club. The divorce nearly destroyed her. She'd been married to Dad for 28 years, and suddenly she was throwing it all away for some rich asshole who dumped her the minute things got complicated. I'm sorry. The worst part, Dad would have forgiven her. He loved Mom, understood she was going through something, but she was so ashamed of being used that she couldn't face him. They never reconciled. Mom moved to Florida, won't even come back for family events. Dad's retiring from the bench next year, and she won't be there for his ceremony. I absorbed this information, feeling the weight of Morrison's casual destruction. How many families had he broken? How many lives had he ruined for his momentary pleasure? Thomas, hypothetically, if someone wanted to bring Morrison to justice, what would be the most effective approach? My friend studied me carefully. This isn't hypothetical, is it? I said nothing. Professional conduct review with the Better Business Bureau. IRS investigation into his use of company resources for personal matters, civil suits from his victims, and most effectively, public exposure. Public exposure? Morrison's business depends on his reputation. He develops luxury properties for wealthy clients who value discretion and class. If those clients knew he was a serial predator who destroys families, Thomas didn't need to finish the sentence. 2 months after Morrison ended things with Rachel, I was ready to strike, but first I needed to deal with my wife. Rachel had moved through depression into a kind of numb acceptance. She was functioning, going to work, handling her responsibilities. But the spark was gone. She moved through our house like a stranger, polite but distant. I've been thinking, I said at one evening over dinner, maybe we should see a marriage counselor. Rachel looked up, startled. What? We've been distant lately. I think talking to someone might help us reconnect. Robert, she stopped, seeming to struggle with words. I know something's been bothering you. Work stress, maybe other things. I just want us to be honest with each other. The word honest hit its mark. Rachel flinched visibly. I don't think counseling is necessary, she said carefully. Why not? Because I don't think our problems can be fixed by talking. Interesting phrasing, not we don't have problems, but our problems can't be fixed. What kind of problems do you think we have? I asked. Rachel stared at her untouched food, the kind that destroy marriages. Are you having an affair? The question hung in the air between us. Rachel's face went through a series of emotions: panic, guilt, relief, and finally, something that looked like defiance. No, she said, I'm not having an affair. Technically true. The affair was over, but you were. Another long silence. Then, almost inaudibly, yes. I sat back, letting the admission settle. This was the moment I'd been preparing for, but it still felt surreal. How long? 6 months. It's over now. Why did it end? He ended it without explanation. I nodded thoughtfully as if processing this information for the first time. Who was he? A client? James Morrison? Morrison Industries? Yes. I was quiet for a long time, letting Rachel sweat. She was watching me carefully, trying to gauge my reaction. What happens now? She asked finally. I don't know, I said. I need time to think. That night, Rachel slept in the guest room. The next morning, she was gone before I woke up, leaving only a note, staying at my sister's for a few days. We need space to figure this out. Perfect. Now I could work without worrying about her discovering my plans. With Rachel out of the house, I began the most complex legal campaign of my career. The goal wasn't just to win a divorce settlement, it was to systematically destroy James Morrison's life while protecting my own reputation and my children's futures. First, I called Margaret Morrison in Los Angeles. I'm ready to move forward, I told her. What do you need from me? Testimony, documentation, and connections to Morrison's other victims. I can provide all of that. But Robert, you need to understand, this isn't just about divorce anymore. What you're planning is going to ruin him completely. Good. Are you sure you want to go down this road? There's no coming back from total war. I thought about Rachel crying in our bathroom, about Judge Hayes's broken marriage, about the three women who'd attempted suicide after Morrison discarded them. I'm sure Margaret provided contact information for 5 other women Morrison had seduced and abandoned. 3 were willing to cooperate: Dr. Sarah Kim, whose marriage had ended in bitter divorce; Amanda Foster, a real estate attorney who'd lost several major clients when her affair became public; and Jennifer Walsh, a city councilwoman who'd resigned in disgrace when Morrison leaked details of their relationship to a political rival. Each woman had a story that followed the same pattern: professional relationship, gradual seduction, intense affair conducted with promises of discretion, then sudden abandonment with devastating consequences. He's a sociopath, Dr. Kim told me during a conference call. He gets off on the power, on watching successful women destroy their lives for him. Then why didn't you fight back? What was I supposed to do? Sue him for seduction? He was smart enough to never put anything in writing, never make promises he could be held to legally. That was then, I said. Now we have a pattern, multiple victims, and evidence of deliberate predatory behavior. What are you proposing? I laid out my strategy: a coordinated campaign of civil suits, professional conduct complaints, and media exposure that would destroy Morrison's reputation and business empire. It will work, I concluded, but only if we present a united front. One by one, the women agreed to join the campaign. By the end of the week, I had 5 co plaintiffs, dozens of witnesses, and enough evidence to bury Morrison in litigation for years. But first, I needed to protect my family. Sarah and Michael needed to hear about the divorce from me, not from gossip or news reports. I drove up to New Haven on a Friday, planning to visit both kids over the weekend. Dad? Sarah looked confused when I appeared at her dorm. Is everything okay? We need to talk. Both you and Michael. An hour later, I was sitting in a quiet corner of the Yale Law School library with both my children, preparing to destroy their world. Your mother and I are getting divorced, I said without preamble. The silence stretched for nearly a minute. Finally, Michael spoke. Why? Your mother had an affair. It's over now, but our marriage isn't recoverable. Sarah's face went through several emotions. I knew something was wrong. Mom's been different, and you've been, I don't know, distant. How long? Michael asked. 6 months. Who was it? I hesitated. Once I said Morrison's name, there would be no going back. My children would be drawn into the battle, whether I wanted them to be or not. A client of hers, James Morrison, CEO of Morrison Industries. Michael's expression darkened. The real estate guy. He's like 20 years older than mom. Age wasn't the issue. Sarah was crying quietly. What happens now? Now you focus on school while I handle the legal details. The divorce will be messy, but I'll try to keep both of you out of it. What about mom? What about her? Where will she go? What will happen to her? I looked at my daughter, brilliant, compassionate, still trying to protect the mother who'd blown up their family. Your mother made her choices. Now she'll live with the consequences. That's cold, Dad. It's reality. Your mother threw away a 15-year marriage for a few months of excitement with a man who had no intention of leaving his comfortable life for her. Michael was quiet, processing. Finally, he asked, is there anything we can do to help you? Just focus on your studies and don't discuss this with anyone else, not friends, not professors, not other family members. When this becomes public, and it will, I want you both to have maintained your dignity. On the drive home, I felt the weight of what I'd done. My children would never look at their mother the same way again. Our family, whatever its flaws, was broken forever. But Rachel had started this destruction. I was just finishing it. Monday morning, I filed for divorce in Westchester County Supreme Court. The petition was a masterpiece of legal precision, 47 pages detailing adultery, emotional abandonment, and irreconcilable differences. But that was just the opening move. Tuesday, Margaret Morrison filed a civil suit against James Morrison in Manhattan Supreme Court, alleging intentional infliction of emotional distress, fraud, and conspiracy to commit adultery. The suit sought $10 million in damages and included depositions from 3 other women Morrison had seduced and abandoned. Wednesday, Dr. Sarah Kim filed complaints with the Better Business Bureau and the New York State Attorney General's office, alleging that Morrison had used corporate resources to fund extramarital affairs, constituting fraud against his shareholders and business partners. Thursday, Amanda Foster held a press conference announcing a class action suit on behalf of all women victimized by James Morrison's predatory pattern of seduction and abandonment. Friday, the New York Post ran a front page story. Serial seducer, real estate mogul accused of destroying families. By the following Monday, Morrison Industries stock had dropped 30%. 3 major development projects were on hold, and Morrison himself was hiding in his penthouse apartment, refusing to take calls from anyone except his lawyers. The campaign was working perfectly. Rachel returned home Tuesday evening to find the house empty except for me. I was in my office reviewing legal briefs when she appeared in the doorway. You bastard, she said quietly. I looked up from my papers. Hello, Rachel. You orchestrated all of this. I filed for divorce. Everything else is James Morrison reaping what he's sown. Bullshit. You coordinated this attack. I leaned back in my chair, studying my wife's face. She looked haggard, dark circles under her eyes, hair unwashed, clothes wrinkled. The confident, beautiful woman who'd seduced a billionaire was gone. Sit down, I said. I'll stand. Sit down, or this conversation is over. Rachel took the chair across from my desk, the same chair where I'd met with clients for years. You want to know what happened? I asked. I'll tell you exactly what happened. Over the next 20 minutes, I laid out everything: the security footage, Morrison's pattern of seducing married women, the evidence I'd gathered, the ultimatum I'd given him. You ended it, Rachel said when I finished. You threatened him, and he ended it. I gave him a choice: end it quietly or face the consequences publicly. He chose to end it, and then you destroyed him anyway. I destroyed him because he's a predator who's ruined dozens of families over the years. You were just his latest victim. Victim. Rachel's voice rose. I'm not a victim. I chose to have an affair. Yes, you did. And you chose to lie about it for 6 months. And you chose to betray 15 years of marriage for a man who had no intention of leaving his wife for you. He wasn't married. He's been engaged to Patricia Whitman for 2 years. They're planning a Christmas wedding. Rachel's face went pale. That's not, he said he was single. James Morrison says, whatever serves his interests. Surely you've figured that out by now. Rachel was quiet for a long time, absorbing this final betrayal. What happens now? She asked. Now you sign the divorce papers and move on with your life. What if I refuse? Then this gets much worse for you. The civil suits against Morrison include detailed testimony about your affair, your name, your job, your role in destroying your family. It's all on the record. You can't do that to me. I already have. But if you cooperate with the divorce, I'll make sure your involvement stays as quiet as possible. Rachel stared at me for a long moment. I don't recognize you. Good, because I don't recognize you either. She stood up slowly. I'll need time to get a lawyer. Take all the time you need. But understand, this divorce is happening whether you cooperate or not. The only question is how much of your dignity you want to preserve. Within a week, the Morrison scandal had exploded into a full-blown media frenzy. The New York Times ran a 3-part series on predatory executives who abused their power for sexual gratification. CNN featured a panel discussion on toxic masculinity in corporate America. Even international outlets picked up the story. Morrison tried to fight back through his lawyers, claiming the accusations were part of a coordinated conspiracy by disgruntled former business associates. But the evidence was overwhelming, and new women came forward every day with similar stories. The business consequences were swift and brutal. The Morrison Industries Board of Directors called an emergency meeting and voted to remove James Morrison as CEO. Major investors pulled their funding from 3 upcoming developments. The company's stock continued falling, eventually losing 60% of its value. But the personal consequences were worse. Patricia Whitman, Morrison's fiancée, released a statement through her publicist. I am shocked and disgusted by these revelations. I never would have associated myself with someone capable of such cruelty. Our engagement is terminated immediately. Morrison's country club membership was revoked. His charitable foundation suspended operations. Several universities returned his donations and removed his name from buildings. Within a month, James Morrison had gone from respected business leader to social pariah. And through it all, I maintained my position as a peripheral figure, the wronged husband who'd simply filed for divorce, after discovering his wife's affair. The media portrayed me sympathetically. If they mentioned me at all, it was perfect. Rachel hired Patricia Mills, one of the city's most aggressive divorce attorneys. Mills was expensive, ruthless, and known for extracting maximum settlements from wealthy husbands. She was also completely outmatched. Your client signed a prenuptial agreement, David pointed out during our first mediation session. Adultery voids her claim to anything beyond basic spousal support. The prenup was signed under duress, Mills countered. Mrs. Palmer was young, had no legal representation, and was pressured by her husband to sign immediately before their wedding. Mrs. Palmer was 28 years old, held a law degree from Columbia, and had 3 weeks to review the document, I replied calmly. She also consulted with her own attorney before signing. Mills looked irritated. She'd clearly expected this to be a standard wealthy husband versus wronged wife case. Furthermore, David continued, we have extensive documentation of Mrs. Palmer's adultery, including hotel records, credit card statements, and photographic evidence. Photographic evidence. I slid a manila envelope across the table. Mills opened it, revealing several clear images of Rachel entering and leaving the Meridian Hotel with Morrison. Rachel, who'd been silent throughout the session, suddenly spoke. You had me followed. I had my house monitored for security reasons. The fact that you brought your lover there is your responsibility, not mine. Mills flipped through the photographs, her expression growing more grim with each image. What is your client prepared to offer? She asked finally. Minimum spousal support as required by New York law. No division of assets, no claim on the family home, no alimony beyond the statutory requirement. That's ridiculous. Mrs. Palmer contributed to this marriage for 15 years. Mrs. Palmer destroyed this marriage for her own selfish gratification. She's lucky I'm not seeking damages for emotional distress. Mills leaned forward. Are you threatening my client? I'm stating facts. Your client committed adultery. In New York, that has specific legal consequences. The mediation lasted 3 hours and accomplished nothing except to establish how hopeless Rachel's position was. Mills requested a recess to discuss strategy with her client. This is insane, Rachel said as we gathered our papers. You're going to leave me with nothing? I'm going to leave you with exactly what you deserve. I gave you 15 years of my life, and you threw them away for 6 months with a man who didn't even respect you enough to be honest about his engagement. Rachel's composure finally cracked. I know you hate me, but don't you feel anything? Any sadness about what we're losing? I looked at my wife, soon to be ex wife, and felt a complicated mix of emotions. Sadness, yes, anger, certainly, but mostly I felt nothing. I feel relief, I said. Relief that I don't have to pretend anymore. 2 months later, James Morrison was arrested on federal charges of tax evasion and wire fraud. The IRS investigation, prompted by Dr. Kim's complaints, had uncovered years of using corporate funds for personal expenses, including the hotel suites, expensive dinners, and jewelry he'd used to seduce married women. The evidence was damning. Morrison had claimed business deductions for what were essentially dating expenses, then used company credit cards to fund his affairs while reporting the expenses as client entertainment. But the wire fraud charges were more serious. Investigators discovered that Morrison had used company email accounts and phones to coordinate his affairs, technically constituting use of interstate communication systems to commit fraud against his shareholders. If convicted, Morrison faced up to 20 years in federal prison and millions in fines. I watched the news coverage from my office, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. Morrison hadn't just seduced my wife, he'd been running a systematic operation to destroy families while using his company as a cover. Now he would face real consequences. My phone rang. Marcus Webb, my investigator. Morrison's lawyer called. Marcus reported they want to meet. About what? Morrison wants to confess to the affair with your wife in exchange for you providing a character witness statement at his sentencing. I laughed out loud. He wants me to help him. Apparently, he thinks you calling him a devoted family man who made a mistake would carry weight with the judge. What did you tell his lawyer? That I'd pass along the message. What should I tell him now? Tell him to go to hell. That evening, I called my children to update them on the situation. Dad, this is getting really intense, Sarah said. Morrison might go to prison. It looks that way. What about Mom? What about her? She must be devastated. Her affair partner is going to prison. She's losing everything in the divorce. Dad, I'm worried she might do something desperate. I'd been so focused on winning that I hadn't considered this possibility. Rachel was facing social humiliation, financial ruin, and complete isolation from the life she'd built. I'll keep an eye on her, I promised. But when I called Rachel's apartment, there was no answer. I drove to her sister's house in Connecticut, but she wasn't there either. Finally, I found her at the Meridian Hotel, sitting alone in the bar where she'd probably met Morrison dozens of times. She looked up when I approached her table. Come to gloat, come to check on you. Why? Afraid I'll kill myself and ruin your perfect victory. Are you planning to? Rachel laughed bitterly. No, I'm not giving you or anyone else that satisfaction. I sat down across from her. What's your plan? Leave New York, start over somewhere else. Where? Portland, maybe, Seattle. Somewhere I can disappear. The kids will want to stay in touch. Will they? She looked at me with real pain in her eyes. Sarah barely speaks to me. Michael won't take my calls. They're ashamed of me. They're hurt. That's different, is it? I signaled the waitress for a drink. Somehow, sitting in this bar where my wife had betrayed our marriage, I felt like I needed one. You could stay, I said. Fight for relationships with the kids, rebuild your career. Here in New York, after everything that's happened, Rachel shook her head. I'm a cautionary tale now. The middle aged woman who threw away her family for a man who didn't want her. You're also a talented professional with 15 years of experience. Experience as the marketing executive who fucked her client and destroyed two families in the process. We sat in silence for a while. Around us, the Meridian Hotel bar hummed with quiet conversation, business deals, and probably other illicit relationships. I won, I said finally. Yes, you did, but I don't feel like I won. Rachel looked at me with something that might have been surprise. What do you feel like? Like everyone lost. Even Morrison, especially Morrison. He's going to prison for 20 years because he couldn't keep his dick in his pants. And me, I study